Okay, and away we go. Part 2. Lesson 11, we're working with our camera, so we've gotten, hopefully, things configured properly in Android Manifest and in our file path. So now we can start to put some of the code in our profile activity. So let's open up the profile activity.kt in our Java folder. So we're going to need a few variables here, global class level variables that are going to get passed around from some of the methods we're going to be writing. So vars for profile photo. So we're going to use a few. We're going to use one called request code and set that equal to 1,000. So this is the constant for the take picture intent. We're also going to create a variable of type file. We'll need an import for this, so that it's going to be late in it because we're not initializing it right away. We're going to initialize it if and when the user takes a photo. So we'll import the reference. And we'll set a default name for the photo. Oops, to photo.jpg. So let's add these three variables at the class level. I want to basically set up the intent code to take a picture and display it in the image view. We'll set up that method first, and then we'll write our click handler on click listener for our new, our little camera button. So we could write the click handler first, but it's going to call a method that doesn't yet exist. So I'll define that method first, and then in our onCreate, we'll add the handler. I can just throw these right in the chat. They're pretty simple. If you need the variables, there they are. So two methods here. So we're going to call a method called getPhotoFile that will take the name of the file as a string. It will return a file object. So we're going to get our external files directory, which is our environment.directory pictures. And we're going to create a temp file here. So we'll take the name of the file, we'll append a JPEG suffix, and we'll store it in here. So there's our first function. The second function we need is we need to override onActivityResult to handle the result of the camera intent. And then both of these methods are going to get called on the click listener of our button. So we've got three parameters in activity results. So what is the request code, which is an int? So what type of intent did the user invoke? We've got a result code, which is also an integer. And then if there is any data attached to the intent. So it wants us to add a super call here, which we'll do. I'm just going to indent this. So if the intent successfully took a photo, we want to convert the photo to a bitmap to display in the image view. So if our request code is equal to our, and this is where we're using our request code constant up above. So if the request was 1000, which is taking a photo, and our result code was equal to the constant activity dot result okay. So this is just an enumerator. So if we tried to take a picture and it was successful, the super can actually go as an else. We need this call if we're going to override, but this is never really going to execute. So we're going to use the bitmap factory class to generate a new bitmap. And it's got a method here called decode a file where we pass in a path. So the path we want is our file photo dot absolute path. So this is going to give us a bitmap representation of that photo. And then we can call set image bitmap on our image view. So right now, these two methods never get invoked, but they will. So first on our click of our camera, we're going to call get photo file. We're going to set up the intent. We're going to call get photo file, which will give us a temporary name. And then we're going to evaluate using the activity result. If our result is okay, we're then going to decode the file as a bitmap and render it. If we can get the image to show up, if we can get the camera to load and the image to show up, then we'll add the saving of that to permanent storage for Firebase after. Right now, we just want to take a photo and have it be displayed. I'll put these two methods on paste bin so that we can then try to write the click handler of our capture button. Excuse me. Here's the paste bin link. Are there any questions about these methods? I know they may seem a little fuzzy since we haven't tried to execute them yet. So once we've added these two methods, we can now scroll back up to our onCreate, which actually just ends right here. And then we can add the click listener So in here, we can set an on-click listener for our capture button. So we want to create an intent and generate a temp file. So I'll create an intent. So we're using the media store class, and we want the action image capture. So this is the intent we're going to generate. Capture a new image with the camera. And then we're going to populate now our class level variable file name. It's been empty so far. We've just initialized it to photo.jpg. I'm sorry. It's our file photo file. So we're initializing a temp file called profile.jpg. So then we want to invoke the intent and evaluate the result. So we're going to use our file provider, and we're going to call the get URI for file. We have to provide the context, the authority, which is what we defined in our Android manifest. So it's going to be our package name, and lastly, the file. Oops, missed a quote here. This is a string. Sorry, that parameter should have been as a string. I missed the quotes. So we want to get the URI, we want to get the location of that temporary file. And then in our intent, we're going to create an extra. Which is of type media store dot extra output. And we'll pass in our provider file. So we're not passing it as a string, we're passing it as this media store extra output. I guess technically it is a string. Right, our get URI for file returns a context URI. So we're going to try to run the intent. We'll call resolve activity. So then we can call start activity for result, which finally executes our intent. So we're going to run our intent with our request code of 100. So we're going to execute the intent down here. Otherwise, we can show a toast saying the camera didn't open. So if for some reason we can't run the intent, okay, so there's our camera listener. So we should be able to try this now. Create a new intent of type image capture, create a temporary file and get a URI to the file, and include that URI as an extra when we execute our intent. And then we want to execute the intent, passing it request code of 100, which then will trigger on activity result. So we'll run it, then we'll maybe step through it with the debugger, good or bad, see what happens. So here's our click handler. I think it looks pretty good, but we'll try it out and see what happens. We'll see if any changes are required. I'm going to run the app again. And the goal is we should be able to click our camera button, take a photo, and have that photo get rendered into our image view down here on line 83. So I'll run it first just at runtime, and then I'll put in a breakpoint on our handler. We could actually watch what happens behind the scenes. So I'll sign in with Google. And I'll try and take a photo. Okay, what's going on? My app doesn't seem to be working. Okay, let's check our logcat. Let's clear this out. So I set the filter to errors only. Let's see if we get an error. Ultimately, no, Edwin. Good question. We'll come back to that. Obviously, I'm missing a step here. Let's see what's... I'm just going to restart it. Okay. Well, that was interesting. I got an error. I didn't see what it was. Okay, we'll try again. Okay. What's going on? Permission revoked. So I'm getting a permission denied. Okay, we may need to add a little something here to enable the permission. So it's trying to use the camera. Thank you. Yes. Thank you, Edwin. So right, I missed that about the permission check. Now we don't quite need all the contacts. Edwin, do you want to put that on paste bin? That might be a little easier. Thank you. Yes, my mistake. You want to put it on paste bin, we'll add that. So yes, there is a permission check I'm missing. So it says permission is revoked. Now I could go into the emulator settings and manually change it, but we should fix up the code. Interestingly, yes, right here, I think is. Well, that's for our external storage. Thank you, Edwin. So let's go here. I had it, and I think I removed it. Right, now we can probably strip this down a bit. So let's see. We can put that right in our click event, I guess. Or we can even put it just in on create. When the activity is created, so I'm going to paste it. We don't need all these permissions. But we do need, let's see, we need to import. I think this is our Android manifest. But instead of read contacts, it should be we want the camera permissions. So I'll just reconfigure this a little bit. So it's, we don't need the contacts, but we do need permission. We need to read and write external storage. So I'll modify this to camera. So if the permissions are not granted for any one of these, we want a request. And we need a request code. think this can just be maybe a 1. So you use it for reading the contacts. We actually want 3 permissions though. I'm going to try it this way. So if permission is denied for any one of these, we want to ask. We want to request permissions. Just going to try this and see what happens. We'll run it again. So now it's asking, can I use the camera? And can I access the device storage? So now I can invoke the camera. Thank you, Edwin. That was very helpful. I appreciate that. Great to have so smart students in my class. So I can take a photo. And now the photo will display in our image view. Okay. I'll just throw this up on Pastebin. I wanted to check it first. So if I log out of the app and log back in, I shouldn't be prompted for permissions again. If I restart it, because I've already granted the permissions. So here it is on Pastebin, where I've adapted Edwin's permission check for the permissions we need for camera, reading and writing external storage. If I look at my emulator now, if I go to my drag and go to my settings, if we go to the settings and I go to apps, I can go to Restorator, and it shows now that it's enabled camera and storage permissions. So if I log out of the app and log back in, I shouldn't get prompted again. Android has now stored those permissions. So if I log out, my photo is going to be gone, but I shouldn't get asked for the permissions again. Right? It's not going to ask me for the permission because by saying yes, I've granted that permission to this app permanently. Now, it was very silly of me not to add this permission check from the beginning. I'll just make a note so I don't forget this next time. So we can take a photo. Now, Edwin, you asked, is it always called profile.jpg? Well, let's run it with the debugger and we can actually see what happens. So this time I'll debug it and I'll try another photo. Oh, this toolbar is the bane of my existence. So we're going to run it in debug mode with a breakpoint. So my image view is empty again. We invoke the camera. Okay, my debugger didn't quite run. Let me try it again. So the file name is photo.jpg. So our provider file here, we can see it actually appends it on. So you'll notice there's a unique URI here. It started out as photo.jpg, which we could probably actually remove that initial name. So you can see that it's unique. Here's the URI. So it's in our package name, project name, file provider, images folder, because that's what we set up here in file path. And then we get a unique name. So we start the activity. Sorry, we try our on activity. Let's just go back here. Put another breakpoint in here. Okay, so it generates a unique, because it's in temp. So that way, if we upload the same file, it'll still be a unique path, even if it's the exact same image. Okay, so we can now load a photo, but it's not persisting. Or at least we're not persisting it along with the user. We are, I guess we are persisting it. We're displaying it, but the photo is just gone. So what we actually want to do is include it, attach it to the user's profile. So we want to add we need to add a couple other functions to do this, and then invoke those functions as well if in our on activity result, if this is successful. So if we can decode the file, convert it to a bitmap and render it, we also want to attach it to the user's profile. So we'll create a method to do this. Save photo to user's Firebase profile. So we'll create a function called save profile photo. And it will take in a URI as a parameter. We need to know the path, where on the device is the photo. So we'll import the URI class. We will set up the profile update to include the photo URI. So the Firebase auth has a user profile change request class. So this is the class we use to update accounts managed through Firebase. So we're going to use the builder, and it's got a set photo URI method. So we can just pass in our image URI parameter. And then we call .build. So now our profile is set up to include our new attribute. And then we want to commit the update to Firebase. So we're going to add our current user, assuming there is one, and we call update profile, and then we can pass in this profile updates object. And then it's got an onComplete listener. So what happens if it's completed? So if it's successful, we can show a message. So image saved to Firebase. Okay, so it runs asynchronously as a task. Whoops, there should not be, I'm sorry, I've got an extra set of curly braces here. That comes out, sorry about that. We use a lambda. So here's our function that's going to take a URI and try and attach that URI as the photo URI property of this user's Firebase account. Now this method isn't being invoked yet. And unfortunately, one thing that's annoying in the Firebase console, if we go in and look in the database, there's no way here to actually see the user photos. You can't see them in Firebase. So if I go and take a user, I can copy the ID, but there's no way to actually see the profile in the console, which is a bit annoying. So we now want to call our save profile method after we take the photo. We also want to save it to Firebase. We'll try that. We're not actually going to see any result. We just want to see if we get this toast message that says image saved to Firebase. And then we'll need a couple of other methods, which I think we'll do after we take a break, to see whether the photo actually loads. If we log out and log back in, can we actually retrieve that photo from Firebase and render it in the image view? So we want to go back up to our activity result here. And now we want to try saving the photo URI to the user's Firebase profile for persistence. Right, so our data, our intent, it's got a URI here. Our absolute path is a string. So we need to convert this to a URI, and then we can save that path to Firebase. So if we use append path, we can take the absolute path and call .build. This will convert that string of absolute path, it converts it to a URI object, which we can then pass to our save photo. So we want to convert the file path from a string to a URI before saving. So we're not really going to see any result of this. We can try it out. The only result we're hoping to get is a toast message that says image saved to Firebase. But until we write some more code, we have no way to actually see if the image is in Firebase. Not yet anyway. Okay, so I've added this inside my if statement. If our photo is good and we can render it as a bitmap, we're then going to convert that file path from a string to a URI, and we're going to update our user's profile. I'm going to try this out, and the only real notification we should get, we're either going to get an error, or I'll get a toast that says image saved to Firebase. I'll give it a try. And once we can load it, I'm going to try signing in with different accounts and saving different images. And I want to make sure that the proper profile loads, the proper image loads with each user. So I'll swing around the apartment here and take a shot of the window. And save. That happened so fast, I didn't see if there was a toast here. I'm not sure there was. I'm going to try another photo. I wasn't really looking for it, I admit. Okay, well, we didn't see a toast, but it may have been hidden by the image. So in order to check whether this is actually saved to Firebase, as I said, we can't see it in here anywhere. Here's my account, but I can't see what's here. So what we will do is I'm going to upload this to GitHub now. And then when we come back, we won't need another full hour. We're just going to need a method to, when the user logs in or loads this, we're going to have to try to load that file from the image URI back into the image view. And then we'll want to call that method in onCreate. That as soon as the user loads the profile photo, as soon as they load the profile activity, we're going to call that method that will check, is there a URI, a photo URI attached to their profile in Firebase? If yes, we want to use that URI on our local device to display the photo. So I will stop recording now. I'm going to upload to GitHub. Are there any questions before we